Welcome to this lecture on the modes of disease transmission in insect vectors. Today, we are going to explore the fascinating and sometimes frightening ways that insects pass dangerous pathogens to humans and to their own offspring. Understanding these mechanisms is the absolute foundation of medical entomology and public health. By the end of this session, you will know exactly how outbreaks start, how they are sustained, and most importantly, how we can use mathematics and biology to stop them in their tracks. Let us begin with our first major concept, horizontal transmission. Imagine you are passing a baton in a relay race on a sunny afternoon. You run up to your teammate, hand over the baton, and they continue the race. In the world of vector-borne diseases, horizontal transmission is very much like this relay race. It is the process where an infected insect passes a pathogen to a completely new, uninfected host, such as a human or an animal. The insect acts as the runner, and the pathogen is the baton being passed along. This is the primary engine that drives massive epidemics across the globe. Now that we understand the basic idea of the relay race, let us look at exactly how the insect carries this baton. Horizontal transmission can happen in two main ways. The first is mechanical transmission, where the insect simply carries the pathogen on its body parts, acting much like a dirty syringe. The pathogen does not grow or change, it is just hitching a ride. More commonly, and more dangerously, we see biological transmission. Here, the pathogen must actually multiply or undergo a complex developmental cycle inside the insect's body before it can be transmitted to the next host. This biological relationship is highly specific and drives the most severe outbreaks. Diving deeper into biological transmission, we find that the exit route for the pathogen is just as important as how it develops. Scientists divide biological transmission into two pathways. The first is the anterior station. This is when the pathogen is transmitted through the insect's saliva directly into the host's bloodstream during a bite, which is how mosquitoes transmit malaria. The second pathway is the posterior station. In this case, the insect excretes the pathogen in its feces while feeding. When the human scratches the itchy bite, they accidentally rub the infected feces into the open wound. Understanding these specific routes is absolutely crucial for defining how a disease spreads. To make these pathways perfectly clear, let us look at this diagram illustrating both mechanisms side by side. On the left, you see an infected mosquito landing on a healthy human arm. The red arrow indicates the anterior station pathway, where the pathogen is injected directly through the saliva as the mosquito feeds. Now, look at the right side. Here we have a triotomine bug. The blue arrow shows the posterior station pathway. The bug is defecating near the bite site, and the pathogen is in the feces, waiting to be rubbed into the wound. This visual contrast highlights the different biological strategies pathogens use to enter our bodies. With the biological mechanisms understood, we must now ask how epidemiologists predict the spread of these diseases. They use a mathematical concept called the basic reproduction number, or R0. This formula, a simplified version of the Ross-McDonald equation, calculates the average number of new human infections generated by a single infected human. Let us look at the key variables. The letter A represents the biting rate. Notice it is squared because a mosquito must bite twice to complete the cycle, once to get infected and once to transmit. The Greek letter mu represents the daily mortality rate of the mosquito. If the mosquito's lifespan decreases, meaning mu increases, the value of R0 drops sharply. This is exactly why killing adult mosquitoes is our best defense. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. Suppose we are studying a village where the mosquito-to-human ratio is 2. The transmission probabilities are both 0.5, the survival probability is 0.4, and the daily mortality rate is 0.1. The mosquito bites once every 2 days, making the biting rate 0.5. We substitute all these known values into our equation. We square the biting rate of 0.5 to get 0.25. Multiplying the numerator gives us 0.05, which we then divide by the mortality rate of 0.1. The final answer is 0.5. Because this value is less than 1, it physically means the disease will eventually die out in this village. So, we have seen how diseases spread from insect to human. But what happens when the insect passes the disease to its own babies? This brings us to our second major concept, vertical transmission. Imagine a family passing down a precious heirloom, like a vintage pocket watch, from a mother to her child. The child is born already possessing this item, without having to go out and find it. Vertical transmission works in a very similar, albeit more sinister, way. It is the process where an infected female insect passes the disease-causing pathogen directly to her own offspring. The baby insects hatch already carrying the infection without ever having bitten an infected host. Now that we know what vertical transmission is, let us examine the biological mechanisms behind it. In medical entomology, this most commonly occurs as transovarial transmission. This means the pathogen actually infects the ovaries of the female vector and physically enters the developing eggs. Another related concept is transstadial transmission, where the pathogen survives and is maintained as the insect grows through its different life stages, from larva to pupa and finally to a flying adult. Together, these mechanisms allow the insect population to act as a permanent, hidden reservoir for the disease. It ensures the pathogen persists through harsh environmental conditions, like cold winters, when adult insects die off, but their infected eggs survive. Understanding these hidden reservoirs leads us to a critical realization. Vertical transmission is a nightmare for disease control. Why? Because it means that simply curing all human patients will not eradicate the disease from the environment. The pathogen is safely hiding inside the insect eggs, waiting in the water to hatch next spring. Viruses that cause dengue and lacrosse encephalitis are maintained exactly this way. If we ignore vertical transmission, our disease models will fail, and outbreaks will mysteriously reappear year after year. This biological reality forces public health officials to shift their focus toward destroying aquatic breeding sites, rather than just spraying chemicals to kill adult flying insects. To truly grasp this hidden threat, let us walk through the vertical transmission cycle shown in this diagram. At the top, we start with an infected mother mosquito, highlighted in red. Following the first arrow down, we see transovarial transmission occurring, resulting in a clutch of eggs where several are already infected, again shown in red. As we move further down, these infected eggs hatch into infected larvae swimming in the water. Finally, at the bottom, these larvae mature into a new generation of infected offspring, ready to transmit the disease the moment they take their first bite. This diagram perfectly illustrates how the disease bypasses the need for a human host entirely. Having seen the cycle visually, we can now model it mathematically. To understand how vertical transmission sustains a pathogen, Entomologists use a simple mathematical recurrence relation. This equation predicts the infection prevalence in the next generation. Let us break down the symbols. I sub n plus 1 represents the number of infected insects that will emerge in the new generation. This is calculated by taking I sub n, which is the number of infected mothers currently present, and multiplying it by F, the average fecundity, or number of eggs laid per female. Finally, we multiply by V, the vertical transmission efficiency. This V is the exact probability that an egg actually inherits the pathogen. If the mother lays fewer eggs, the subsequent infected population shrinks. Let us apply this recurrence relation to a real-world scenario. A health department identifies 100 infected female mosquitoes. On average, each female lays 50 viable eggs. Laboratory tests show the vertical transmission efficiency is 0.2, meaning 20% of the eggs inherit the virus. We want to find the number of infected offspring. We substitute our values into the formula. First, we multiply the 100 mothers by 50 eggs, giving us a total of 5,000 eggs laid. Then we multiply those 5,000 eggs by the 0.2 transmission efficiency. The final answer is 1,000 infected mosquitoes in the next generation. Physically, this proves that even without human hosts, the mosquito population generates a massive new wave of vectors purely through maternal inheritance. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, so let us summarize the most important ideas. First, horizontal transmission is the relay race that passes pathogens between vectors and hosts, driving active epidemics. We saw how the basic reproduction number mathematically proves that reducing mosquito lifespan is our most effective tool against this spread. Second, vertical transmission is the inherited infection, passing directly from mother to offspring. This mechanism turns the insect population into a hidden natural reservoir, allowing diseases to survive harsh winters. You now understand both the biology and the mathematics of how vector-borne diseases survive and spread. Excellent work today, and keep these principles in mind as you study public health.